Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining Real-Time Retail, this webinar. We're going to discuss capturing growth opportunities in the post-pandemic omni-channel world. So get ready for an hour and a half of intense conversation as we look at engaging some really intelligent people about this subject. So just to start us all off, even before the pandemic, the world retail was changing really fast, never more fast than it does in China. The pandemic itself, as we all know, just increased the pace of change. So customers across all markets are demanding more experiences from retail brands. They're really wanting more personalization, they're wanting more relevance, and they want to be more engaged than ever before, not only outside of the store, but within the store as well, and all the different channels which that they encompass and they touch on a daily basis. Much of this change has been enabled by technology, by omnichannel personalization have now become real realities. In all markets across Asia, you're noticing that the ability for a brand to touch a consumer even before, during, and after the purchase process is becoming definitely a reality, and consumers are demanding even more of that. Gamification, real-time content are all expected, and they're all kind of table stakes as we go forwards. Sustainability is also finding its voice as brands really trying to find a purpose, especially in post-pandemic era, and consumers are looking for more kind of meaningful engagements. So across Asia, also middle class is proving to be a huge opportunity for retail brands, but all of this is beset by hurdles and in some cases some challenges. So to explore this fascinating landscape, we're going to be joined by some retailing titans and some specialist experts as we discuss the opportunities to grow the market share. Just an important note as we go forwards is that we need to adhere to Chatham House rules. That means that while you can listen to the content and you can utilize the content, no affiliation of the speakers nor of any participants may be revealed. So onto the agenda. So we're going to talk about the backdrop, the macro trends. We've got a panel discussion, which is going to be super interesting. We've got Kantar delivering some insights and research. We've got some small case studies which talk about how we deliver the sales showing examples of how to do that. And then we're going to talk about the future. On our panel, we're very honored and lucky to be joined by Winnie Ma, by Christian Fodis, and by Chris Reiterman. And Chris will introduce that panel in just a moment as the panel gets started. We've also got a series of experts who are going to come in and talk about specialist different activities, whether it be social, whether it be D2C, whether it be metaverse and experiences throughout that presentation towards the end. One note, please, it'd be great if you could ask some questions. Please put them in the chat and hopefully we'll get to them towards the end and we'll answer as many as we can. I'm going to pass over to Chris, who's going to talk about the backdrop and the trends affecting retail in Asia today. Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Shalane. I really wanted to start this off before we kind of get into the discussion and the cases with kind of the 30,000 foot view on some of the sort of big imperatives that not only retail businesses have, but I think many businesses are looking at, certainly in their long-term strategies. So I think usually I avoid massive scaremongering statements like this, but I think it's fair to say this is no longer scaremongering. The world is genuinely in a new era, and I think the past couple of years have shown us that, and the next few years that are to come are likely going to be very different than the past 30 years. There is a lot of certainly disruption, and there is a lot of change happening within the marketplace, and this changes the growth dynamics for businesses, and again some of the things that we will look at today. I don't want to be all doom and gloom, certainly. I'm going to try and avoid the C word too much, but certainly that word and the two-speed strategy that we're seeing in the rest of the world and in parts of Asia are going to be a continual challenge for businesses, and there are more waves to come, sadly, around recession, inflation. We've seen talent mismatches with sort of the Great Resignation. Surely everybody's also suffering from supply chain issues, and we've got climate change as a certainly big topic that all businesses are grappling with at sort of the macro level. So I think that CEOs and CMOs are going to have to deal with these this macro backdrop, and as I said, there's more to come. But simultaneously, the marketplace is evolving fast, and we've been, you have been looking at this for decades, I'm sure, but we are shifting towards new generation of customers that have shifting expectations and new needs. So somehow businesses, leaders of businesses need to, balance and operate differently and outthink these macro trends and the marketplace as it is evolving. So what I wanted to look at just underneath this to kind of bring a few topics to bear is what I am hearing from CEOs and CMOs and business leaders that are trying to respond to this backdrop. And I think the first one, and it's the one that probably comes up the most frequently, is what I'm just going to call customer ownership. But it also includes customer knowledge, so it also includes the depth of the knowledge that you have around customers, and this has become very critical. And I think many businesses during that C word were caught out because they didn't have full ownership of the customers, particularly as they had to pivot their businesses to online. And this coincides with changes in things like third-party cookie usage, where just getting to understand and know your customers becomes even harder. So first-party data, I think, is incredibly critical, and we are seeing a revival of CRM, customer engagement platforms, and loyalty trying to address this. Now, the interesting, I think, dichotomy here is that in a recent survey, 2/3 of people said that they felt giving data over really only benefited the company that they gave it to and saw no value for them. But equally, you've got almost the same again, 2/3 of people saying that they want more personalized experiences and offers. And so therefore, it has to be about the value exchange. And we'll talk about that as we look at some of the cases, and hopefully we can get into a bit of discussion on the panel. The second imperative, and Shilen touched on this in the opening, is capturing that upper middle class, particularly in China. It is the fastest growing segment, particularly in luxury, and they punch well above their weight in terms of how they over-index in luxury categories compared to anywhere else in the world. And so they are an incredibly important growth driver for retailers. It's expected to grow nearly 2 times by 2030, and in China specifically, China will represent 1/3 of the world's luxury sales through this particular segment. So it is a massive segment to get to grips with, particularly if you're in China, as you look across into other Asian markets as well, where we're seeing similar growth. So a very important one to get to grips with. The third imperative, perhaps related to capturing the upper middle class, is meeting unmet needs. And Shilen has mentioned a couple at the beginning there, particularly for the next generation of customers that most businesses are looking at, is things like local for local, like the rise of domestic brands and people wanting to engage with brands within their market. And also, as mentioned, sustainability becoming table stakes, becoming something that people want to see actioned, not just promised in the brand experience and throughout the life cycle that they have with that brand. And other things that we're hearing more recently, the need around connectivity, getting connected to people and networks, particularly in that high net worth and luxury space again. So these are all needs that need to be identified and met and responded to by businesses. And again, this is incredibly important for capturing and engaging those lucrative segments. The fourth one is what I'm just calling commerce as a proposition, not a channel. There's the shift of strategies to looking at commerce, online to offline, not just as a set of channels that you sell through. And I think many people will be thinking about this and doing things around this. It's not just a place to convert, but it is becoming a core proposition, particularly if you look to growing cities or lower tier cities in China again, where online platforms are perhaps the first place people discover brands and discover product, and therefore they are not again just a place to convert. They have to be a proposition that carries through from online all the way through to offline. And that expectation from most consumers is that is a seamless experience, both from a brand point of view, as well as kind of the actual customer experience point of view as well. What's really interesting is that 50% of sales for luxury online come from people that are under 30, and we're going to touch on Gen Z a little bit later, but that means that they bring a whole new set of expectations with them about how they want to see commerce work, and they have expectations around the platforms that they expect to engage with, and they are fickle. They are quite happy to jump from platform to platform when they're doing discovery, all the way through to perhaps converting on Taobao Live or somewhere like that, instead of on an owned platform. So businesses need to think hard about what that O2O experience is for that particular audience. And last the last but not least is capturing value as well as creating it. Now this might seem a little bit more ethereal, but it is a critical thing that businesses that want to outpace the category are looking at. So not just creating value through products and service, but how they can also capture more of the value that the customer has through owned and orchestrated ecosystems. So that might be capturing through things like memberships. It could be as tactical as club spaces and experiences, of course, but it is about keeping the customer within an ecosystem beyond your product and service to capture more value from them. And MIT CISA, which is the Center for Information Systems Research, has looked at about 4,000 companies over the last 10 years that do this really well, including in Asia. And they see that companies that do this really well, that capture this value, that create these ecosystems, outgrow their competitors by 26% on revenue and outperform on margin by plus 19% margin points. So a lot to be said in having a strategy that kind of moves you into capturing value. And just to give you a real world example, most recently I've seen the likes of Mandarin Oriental partnering with Stay One, and I believe they've invested in them from what I can see publicly, to then combine with F1 and bring net new propositions to customers. So they are engaging through experiences, but they're doing it in a way that imbues the brand, the Mandarin brand, uses a partner to get access to properties around the world that are not necessarily hotels, and bringing them to experiences like F1 on a continued basis, not just a tactical one-off basis. And that is where they capture and own value around these customers. So I think this is really wanted to kind of set us up for some of the discussion and come back to these maybe at the end and have a think about how some of the things we're going to show you today addresses these kind of core growth imperatives. It's quite clear that retail is awash with innovation trying to solve for many of these imperatives, whether it is circular business models, whether it is retail brands moving into new online spaces, whether it's new commerce models, whatever it happens to be, retail is moving hard and fast to try and address these imperatives. And I think, as we will see, there's a difference, I think, between tactics and actually strategies for rolling some of this innovation out. Now, it takes unusually a Canadian, and we do have another Canadian on the Zoom who will talk a little bit later, but it takes a Canadian to tell us that it is going to go faster, to tell the world that actually it's only going to get faster for us to kind of to innovate around these different things, and therefore we need to be wired differently to be able to solve these. So that's a little bit of the backdrop. What I'd love to do now is discuss this with some of the leaders who are at the coalface of these imperatives and this speed that they need to go at. So Chris, I'm going to hand over to you, and we're going to get into the panel discussion, maybe to some reaction to that and some further questions.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chris. Chris passes to Chris and another Chris on the panel. So we have a lot of Chris's today. I'm really happy to do this panel and do it with two great industry leaders, Winnie Ma and Christian Forres. Let me give a very quick introduction to the two of them. And Winnie is the Asia president of VF, Corporation. For those of you that don't know, VF is one of the most biggest and most interesting lifestyle apparel group holding companies, owner of amazing brands like Vans, North Face, Supreme, and many others. And Winnie comes from the world of CPG. I know her for many years in roles in Unilever, Coca-Cola, and fairly recent being the Asia president for VF. Christian is a true luxury man. He has worked for Ferragamo, Valentino, and also fairly recently joined Zegna, which is an iconic over 100-year-old Italian luxury house. I hope I say that right. And both of them have kind of joined probably at a very interesting time in those new roles. I think both have kind of joined and basically gone into COVID madness over the last 2 years. And one also very interesting thing is Winnie is based in Shanghai and has been locked at home for the last 2 months, like many of us. And Christian, from his temporary base in Singapore, has actually been traveling the region. So both of them probably experience quite a different way to do their jobs and go around their business. And I think the best thing is for both of you to just give us an initial view how you kind of encountered the last 2 years, how business is doing, what are your big challenges, issues, how you see kind of the industry at large kind of developing. There's so much change, so much interesting innovation happening in the retail sector. So let's just start with that. And ladies first, Winnie, why don't you give us a bit of a view on what's going on in the world of VF?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Indeed, it's a very interesting world that we are living and working in today. Never getting bored. So I'm talking about from the perspective of apparel and footwear industry, and particularly in China. With one consumer buying only 1.4 products in average from the same brand in a year. And with China, on the way to becoming the world's biggest apparel and footwear market by 2025, we see our biggest opportunity to drive the growth in the region is to really get more people buying more of our brands and products, which is to grow our brand's penetration. And we will drive this through building powerful brands, offering relevant and appealing products to consumers, and elevating retail in really delivering engaging consumer experiences throughout the consumer journey. And we certainly see a lot of tailwinds for VF in Asia. We talk about the rising middle class, 300 million middle class in China alone, and the rising consumer trends on health and wellness. More people participation in outdoor activities, which was further accelerated after Beijing Winter Olympics. So we see this as, the great opportunities for VF and our brands. There's certainly challenges. The biggest uncertainty and short-term disruption for us is COVID. And the restrictions on people's activities. I believe this is the same, for most of the companies operating, in China and Asia. Another disruption, for the apparel industry in the past, 1 year from COVID is definitely on the supply side. In Asia, is the key sourcing side for many apparel brands. So really navigating this unpredictability and really operate with rigor and agility in driving growth is really the focus, for us.
Thanks, Winnie. Great overview. Christian, what's your view?
My view is being shaped in 2 periods. I would say you asked for the last 2 years. So I joined Zegna, in fact, almost 2 years ago. And I started when COVID was starting. So it's been definitely a very interesting journey because I've been basically not traveling for almost a year. I was kind of stuck in Hong Kong. And this was the first part of my journey. And I think it was very interesting because I came to the realization that the digitalization, the transformation of the digitalization, the tools that we were having was allowing me, in fact, to interact with the teams, and we also interacted with customers in a different way. So that was definitely a fundamental transformation for our company, but I think for the industry at large, was, making all realize, oh, maybe there is a different way to engage with customers. Maybe there is a different ways to engage with the teams. Maybe there is a even more efficient way to remain in touch and in contact with everyone. And so I was starting to think, maybe I'm going to travel less. I normally travel to 120 to 140 days a year, as I cover all of Asia from India to Japan. So I was starting to think, oh, maybe, there is a different world from the one I've been working so far. And then suddenly, post-COVID world starts reopening, and I've been not stopping more than 1 week in the same city. So in reality, my wish or my hope maybe at the time has been unrealized. But on the positive notes, I've been able to start seeing the world opening up in the post-COVID world. And I've been in Europe, traveling in Europe. I've been since March in Singapore, and I was able to travel all over the region, in Australia, in Vietnam, in Cambodia, in India, now I'm in Japan. So, and next week I'm going to be in Korea. So it seems that wherever I go, and wherever the countries have been able to open up, there is a tremendous opportunity of growth, because people, they really want to get back with their lives. They really want to, continue to enjoy what they used to have as a life previously. And I believe also that for the brands that are in the luxury segments, and are particularly close to the high net worth individuals, I believe that the world is getting more and more polarized, and unfortunately COVID was probably polarizing the world even further, and at the end of the day, the happy few, they're becoming even happier. That's the unfortunate thing. But for the luxury segment, I believe this is also an opportunity to reach to even larger clientele.
Thank you, Christian. As you're kind of now experiencing kind of a post-COVID world, is there any major shifts or opportunities that you're seeing as people go back shopping, or people are eager to, experience the brand in a retail environment? Do you see any big changes or opportunities there?
I do see many opportunities. First of all, there is going to be the rejuvenation of the wardrobe in a post-COVID world. People will interact with their wardrobe in a different way. So there is a clear shift from the more formal dimension to a more leisure wear dimension. Clearly, the COVID has been a tremendous accelerator. So that's definitely one important shift. The interaction through digital channels and the one-to-one outreach and conversation with customers, I think, reached a new height, and everyone is investing further down the line in that direction. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how travel retail will evolve in the next years. I think the consensus is that there will be less traveling for business and more traveling for pleasure. So let's see how this will play a role, but I do see a quite active travel retail in this moment, accelerating and faster. Airports are getting busier and busier. For the lucky ones that have been able to travel, you realize flights are getting so much more expensive because the demand is accelerating tremendously. And of course, there is still not yet the same amount of airplanes available. So I think it's going to be definitely an interesting transformation to see how this will play and how it will move forward. But I also believe that store formats might be changing. The activations that brands are doing with customers will change. I think it's going to be smaller groups of people, probably really one-to-one conversation to that level. money can't buy experiences. So visit, I don't know, the factory visit. We have, as example, a farm in Australia where we have merino sheeps. Maybe customers, they're interested to see the source of the whole process, you know, and for a company like us that is fully verticalized, could be interesting for our top clientele to really get to know the product and the authenticity of our production of the made in Italy. I think this is all opportunities that will open up. I don't know how larger events will play. Fashion shows and large activations might be changed. Although I have to say that I was in India during the fashion week, and I was attending 3 or 4 fashion shows of Indian brands, and I was amazed not only by the increased creativity of local brands, but also really the people that want to get out. There were nice, you know, activities, nice parties. It looked like COVID was something of the past, and it was just a couple of months ago. So yeah, I think we are still evolving, and it depends also how much we are scarred by COVID. You know, some people that have been probably more affected from lockdowns, etc. It will take some time to get back psychologically to where we were, but I believe that the world is coming back rapidly.
Yeah, and I do think this, you know, human need is to go out and interact with people, and one thing that I see definitely is that people throw a lot of things that happened during COVID overboard, and they just want to get out in the real world, and they want to go shopping, they want to buy stuff. Probably many people have to buy pants and shoes again, because on Zoom you only need a t-shirt. So yeah, Winnie, you're unfortunately still in the midst of dealing with lockdowns in Shanghai. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about, you know, especially China and how you see that developing, you know, in the next few months for you guys. I'm sure it was quite tough in the last 2-3 months, obviously. But you know, I do think China, obviously, for any retail and apparel brand, is still a huge opportunity, massive market. And we've seen so much innovation in the last 2 or 3 years in China, in the digital space, all of that, new brands coming up, local brands. You mentioned it before in India. Maybe you can just give us a bit of a view on you know, China and how you see that developing over the next few months. Yeah,
so fortunately today should be the last day of the lockdown, you know, following the government announcement of the officially lifting up of the lockdown from June the 1st. So indeed, the past 3 months actually brought to, you know, all the businesses, including us, you know, big disruption. So, you know, including our logistics and fulfillment, including, you know, the significant drop of the traffic online and offline, and also on the, you know, the consumer demand side. I think the team have done really great work in terms of proactively managing the business. So now as we are, I mean, at the beginning of the lockdown, definitely we, you know, our priority first is to really protect and support our teams. And on business side, I call that defense plan. So this is really about the business continuity in terms of, you know, revisiting and reprioritizing our investment and activities, and also adjust our brand communication to really, you know, fit in the context of the lockdown to be relevant to consumers. And we also, you know, we've also done our scenario planning based on different, you know, assumptions of the lockdown. And on the other side, proactively managing inventory, you know, which is critical, I think, for the apparel and footwear, you know, companies. On the other side, we're also working, you know, actively on our, I call that offense plan. So this is really about based on the understanding insights of, you know, the consumer sentiment, motivation changes across different phases. Now we are, you know, approaching the end of the lockdown, at least in Shanghai. Hopefully it will be very soon in other, you know, parts of China. What people, you know, look forward to or desire is really to enjoy the freedom to go out. And specifically relevant insight for us is they wanted to go back to nature. They wanted to enjoy all these outdoor, street activities, to go back, with their friends, with their families. So that's actually give us the opportunity to really, reactivate relevant, consumer activities to make sure that we are there, to serve our consumers with our product, but also to emotionally, stay relevant and resonating with our brand activities. So those are basically, the focus. And then we talk about in terms of from the channel perspective, definitely COVID has further accelerated, I would say, e-commerce or digital commerce. But I would say both e-commerce and brick and mortar stores will continue to play, important roles, but both are evolving. So if you look at the e-commerce, is no longer the traditional, online shopping. The rise of, I call that diversification of the e-commerce platforms. Tmall is getting more interesting, more entertaining, but also the rise of like Douyin, like Dewu, all this actually is driven by the consumer motivation. What they look for is no longer just about conversion and transaction, but also the way they would expect to interact, to experience, and to shop the brands. And then when it comes to brick and mortar, we talk about, how should we really redefine the role of stores in this evolving, consumer, changing consumer, context. And how can we really create this kind of like differentiated and immersive, experiences that not only drive conversion, but also build brands and generate social buzz. So earlier in the year, I think it's January, February, right before, Beijing Winter Olympics, for instance, our North Face brand staged this, what we call Urban Ride. It's actually a snowboarding activation event in Taikuli, one of the biggest shopping mall in Shanghai. You really bring the game closer to consumers and inspiring people's interest in snow. By doing so, it will also enable us to really authenticate the North Face outdoor brand equity, through their engaging consumer experiences. So I think, different brands, different company, I believe, are all exploring in terms of how we keep evolving the way we engage our, consumers and build our brands, along with, the evolution of the context and consumers.
And I think that's a challenge, at large in the retail sector, that the role of the physical store is emerging, and that the two worlds kind of come together, right? Everybody talks about O2O, but I'm sure that also poses quite a lot of challenges in how you create kind of a seamless experience for your consumers. But definitely, I do think human nature is that people want to touch and feel stuff. So even as e-commerce will get more important, you probably need to reimagine the role of retail and the physical store. One thing I wanted to ask both of you, and maybe we can start with Christian, because I always felt the luxury sector is probably one of the more conservative sectors for many years. I think probably behind the curve in digital transformation, and I really feel in the last 2 years, probably even in the last 12 months, you've seen a gigantic shift in my view, and now, and you will see some of the cases later, actually the luxury sector industry, they're doing some amazing stuff in Web3, metaverse, all sorts of stuff, very innovative, a big shift to e-commerce as well. Even brands that 2 years ago said we will never get into e-commerce. So what's your view on all of that, Christian?
But of course, I completely agree with you. It's been incredible to see the evolution of the digitalization and the channels, or as Chris mentioned it before, the real impact of what has been happening in that aspect. I think what is happening, the big shift and big change is, how much technology is influencing the retail and retail engineering. So from something that was, of course, more familiar, like RFID, to artificial intelligence, to digital tools. As example, we are working on our own platform called Z2C, that is a way of outreach to customers, where we have an overarching platform, and independently from the social media or the connectivity point, that can be WeChat, can be Line, can be WhatsApp, can be the emails, can be the mobile, depending on the preference of the customers. But we have a full control of what is happening. We have control on, the content we are delivering. We do customized activations one-to-one with the customers, depending on, the data we have and the preference that they have. We can also have, of course, one-to-one conversations with our CAs that are, again, bringing a kind of semi-live experience into the connecting the brick and mortar to the real person. For us as a brand, I think there is also a big opportunity. We are definitely probably champions in this off the walls business. We do a large portion of our business is customized, is bespoke, is made to measure. So it's really unique products, very personalized products, where the territory of conversation with the customers is really one-to-one, is really unique, and it doesn't need to be necessarily in the shops. It can be at their places, it can be at their office, it can be where they feel comfortable, and so it's definitely, it can be digital, it can be brick and mortar, it can be off the walls, it can be really wherever the customer feels there is a need. But we are also thinking new ways to interact also with customers beyond stores, beyond off the walls, and working with collaborations. As example, with hotels, there is an opportunity to really create a Zegna world, as example, in the hotel. So there is this whole contamination as well that is becoming extremely interesting between, the various worlds of the lifestyle. That can be hotels, can be restaurants, can be a cafe. So this contamination of experiences, it's becoming more and more interesting. But of course, it needs to remain extremely authentic. Otherwise, there is no purpose to it. But again, interestingly enough, and talking about China, China is also at the forefront of innovation, of digital innovation. I mean, everything that it's happening in the digital world, and not only, but also in the retail world, looking at what is happening with local brands is amazing. It's incredible what they've been able to do. And we are really looking with, what they're doing to get also inspired on very interesting concepts. So definitely, I think it's we need to be prepared, we need to be equipped, and we need to be observing without any prejudice, what is really happening in the retail world, independently from the countries, because there is incredible solutions stemming up in various parts of the world.
Yep, absolutely. You give me like another 10 things I want to ask you, but we only have 5 minutes left. So let's quickly move to really. You talked a lot about data, Christian. I was just wondering, in a big group like VF that operates multiple brands, probably all targeting fairly similar consumers. Just two questions. One is, how do you see data and being closer to customers? You talked before about driving penetration. Should be a huge opportunity for business like any retail business. You have the ability to know your customers pretty well. What's your view on that, and what are you guys doing on that? And then because Christian mentioned collaborations, supreme brands, those brands are probably masters of collaboration. So maybe you can give a quick view on that as well.
Yeah, good questions. So let me start with digital and technology. So digital transformation really is one of our strategic priorities globally. We're still on this journey, and in China, actually, we're at the forefront of this transformation. Starting from the consumer insights, data insights, all the way to the way we reach, engage, and convert, consumers. I think enabled by data, by technology, this has significantly improved our efficiency and effectiveness. I mean, give you an example. For instance, you talk about our brands, where in driving our, brand penetration, first and foremost, we need to make sure that we reach the right, consumer target. So that's why in the past, 2 years, we have been driving this precision targeting in really, based on the very sharp and clear definition of the consumer target. Data really enable us to precisely reach them, versus the traditional way of mass, communication. Again, in terms of engaging, consumers, when it comes to the content creation, all this machine learnings, automation, come into play, especially when you are in, for instance, social commerce or e-commerce, where massive amount of content, customized content is required. So data, again, enable us to achieve, really elevate our, operation efficiency, effectiveness, and also deliver a higher level of engagement. And nowadays, you mentioned metaverse. This is really, obviously the buzzword these days. So we also keep a close eye in this space, and we understand that it has different, potential in different markets because of the local regulation. So we're focusing, what is most meaningful for consumers, especially in China, and really exploring directions such as, gaming, virtual influencer, and NFT with, with the digital titans. For instance, we have been testing virtual live streamings on Tmall to really complement the online consumer experiences. And then we're working with Tencent on a couple of gaming, opportunities. So this is basically in summary about, what we see in the space of data and technology. Your second question is about collab, right?
Yep.
So indeed, collab culture is important, especially in the streetwear category, where some of our brands play, such as Vans, Dickies, Supreme. We see collab really bring, if you do it well, really bring impact and value to the brands from a couple of angles. First, definitely build the brand heat, brand buzz, brand talkability, because the good collab really bring the excitement and the new news, to the brand, to the category. A great example is, the North Face, for instance. North Face with Gucci in the past 2 years. Last winter, we launched North Face with Cause, generates huge amount of organic talkability. Second, we see collab can also help to elevate the product designs, both from design aesthetics as well as storytelling. So for instance, earlier in the year, actually Chinese New Year this year, Vans launched our Year of Tiger, collection. And this is in collaboration with the Chinese designer. It has done a very good job in terms of injecting the traditional Chinese culture elements into the street art expression, which is received very positively by Gen Z consumers in China. And thirdly, I think another obvious benefit is that collab would definitely enable us to reach new consumers.
Yep. Thanks, Winnie. We're nearly out of time. I have just one final question at both of you. we've been seeing in China, in India, many countries around Asia, a lot of local brands emerging, some of them fairly successful. What's your view on that new competition that you have to deal with? Maybe we start with Winnie.
Yeah, competition is constant. So the key point here, my view is that it's less about the brand being local or global. Fundamentally, it's about brands being relevant, and brands being agile and fast in responding to consumers' needs. So in VF, actually, as we're driving our business to be a truly consumer-centric organization, the team have done a lot of work, made good progress, improving the brand's relevance and driving speed to market, enabled again by data and insights. So we have accumulated a lot of learnings, both from the brand engagement and also from the product creation perspective. For instance, in our strategic collaboration with Tmall, it really allows us to leverage data and insights, from the category understanding, from design trends tracking, all the way to the product creation and the launch. So I think, regardless you are global or you're local, again, the most critical thing is that whether you're relevant to consumers.
Okay, thanks, Winnie. Christian, any view on that?
But first of all, I see this as an opportunity, because we also have a quite important manufacturing platform of made in Italy with a package of several companies in our portfolio and under umbrella that could be one day suppliers also for this brand. So I see this definitely as an opportunity. And we already have several strategic partnerships with the luxury players, but it doesn't mean that one day we cannot participate also to the evolution of some local brands and bring our party. I also believe that there is not such a distant future, not only to do collaborations with the Western brands, but I believe there is an opportunity to do something probably also with some upcoming Chinese designers, Chinese brands, and similarly also maybe one day in India. So I believe there is really opportunity to capture creativity of any country. I believe from what I've seen, the evolution of these countries, what I'm really amazed about is the level of increased creativity in these past years. I mean, in particular in China, and this goes not only in the fashion, but it goes from F&B concept, retail concepts. So I believe this is really an opportunity for any brand to consider one day collaborations, and also a more authentic and meaningful, interpretation of the local needs, rather than just thinking, this could be nice, but to go really to get closer to our consumers.
Okay, thanks so much, Christian and Winnie. I have one final question. You can answer in one word if you want. I was talking to one of our clients yesterday about their outlook on the second half of the year, and she told me they had about 8 scenarios that they're working against, from very positive to very not positive. So what's your view on how the year will unfold?
Sorry, the line was very bad. I couldn't hear the question. I'm joking.
Oh,
No, I can answer you first. I mean, I think it changes by the hour, and reality is that China is such an important market for every brand that, it really depends on how China will behave, with these COVID restrictions, how it will be able to control and open up. This will be, of course, the big game changer. The positive news is that wherever we see, reopening and, really a real post-COVID world, we have seen a tremendous acceleration. And as we said before, people really want to get back their lives. So again, difficult to predict in full the timing, but definitely at a certain point there will be the light.
Winnie?
This is $1 million question, Chris. So I think on the consumer side, actually, especially in the categories where we play, we definitely see, these tailwinds, as I mentioned, for instance, outdoor. So even, during the COVID period, you still see the category growing double digit. But what's unpredictable is really about the COVID, and how the regulation, will be to manage the COVID. I think for us, this is beyond our control. So what we can do is to really navigate this unpredictability, remain agile, and then stay on course in bringing our strategy into action. So this is what I would summarize.
That probably sums it up very nicely, how we all have to run our business for the months ahead. I thank you both so much. This was, really very enlightening, super interesting. I could ask you 100 more questions, but we're out of time. Thank you so much, Winnie and Christian, for doing this. I'm sure the audience found it super interesting. Christian, your background got a lot of positive comments, so you might want to invite people to the Oasi Zegna. So I learned something new as well. Thank you both so much, and we're moving to the next part of the agenda, which is Kantar. Thank you both very, very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm Angelia, and I'm the head of Futures and Innovation at Kantar, and I'm based in Singapore. So you know Kantar for consumer insight, but just leading from Chris's last question to the panel, really my work is about building future scenarios, taking kind of the early signals of what's happening today, and really helping us respond to the unpredictabilities that Winnie spoke about just now as well, that may particularly destabilize our relevance. So today I'm going to take a quick look at what's happening in the retail landscape in APAC today. And then I'm going to dive into 3 key forces that are going to shape the future. Now, talking about the future, I just want to point out the picture that I've chosen here. This is from a Chinese beauty retailer called Hame, and they're really taking those retail environments to a new level. This one is inspired by industrial minimalization, and it's transporting consumers to an R&D lab. And what I think you'll find as a theme for some of the research that we have today is that completely different world that people want to travel to. So looking at the past 1 to 2 years in retail, you'll see that we have all witnessed how the pandemic has accelerated the shift from offline to online in the graphs that I have in the next slide. And it's a real expression of the need for hyperconvenience. There's a shift away from the physical stores to digital shopping. And this was really advanced by 4 whole years. And you can see that APAC was leading the way here. Of course, as we heard from our panel, agility was such a big quality that the retail world brought to fore. And physical footfall did decrease. But we saw that agility in the way they responded. And Chris particularly brought up kind of that one-to-one engagement with customer service that really radically changed the way we associate and we connect with brands. In the next slide, you'll see that kind of our businesses are breaking new records with new store openings, right? This year, it has reversed a 5-year-long downward trend for the very first time. So you can see on the ground, 2020 is well and truly behind us. COVID's impact on retail is over. It's clear that at least in APAC retail, the sales have rebounded quickly and has surpassed 2019 levels as well. They're expected to grow briskly over the next 5 years at a CAGR of 4%. Now, these retail sales forecasts are showing a lot of promising growth, and that's because consumers themselves are coming out of their isolation and they're eager to immerse themselves in in-person experience with the brands as well as the products. Now, in Asia, the stunning stat you see here is that we are expected to hit $3 trillion by 2026 with a CAGR of 11.7%. And of that, 68% of that total retail sale figure is going to physical retail. So e-commerce CAGR may be double that of physical stores, but physical stores will be playing a very dominant role in the full picture. Of course, this is very true for China. With its market so large, its physical retail will contribute more than half of Asia's values. If we go back to the last slide, you'll see that particularly in Southeast Asia, there's a unique split between on and offline retail. Now, this is probably a characteristic of the market that would be very unique for Southeast Asia and something that we would need to address directly as well. In kind of to sum it all up, either way, whether or not physical retail or e-commerce, and it's not really about the channels competing against each other, but how that digital and physical world can really complement each other. And the expectation on physical stores will really have to take a new angle. You'll see next that consumers are now expecting something entirely different from their in-store visit. There are physical stores to experience something that can't be replicated online. And as Winnie kind of said, you know, we need to evolve differentiated and immersive experience to drive that conversion, to build the brands and to generate buzz. And there's an opportunity now to inspire them and pique their curiosity. So the picture behind here you'll see is Hi Panda's Curiosity Design Store. And it's where kind of visitors are using augmented reality to follow an invisible host, a panda bear, who can follow you through the store and give you advice. Now, this is one vision of how retail is going to change. So I want you guys to kind of imagine another vision, which is a retail world where your existence fleets between being in real life and the metaverse. And then your everyday store that you visit also has interactive screens that are their new storefronts. Those physical stores still exist, but mostly as showrooms for trial. And there are more elaborate purchases that you can buy on the spot for your immediate consumptions. One more thing about this future is that the clothes that you wear are from your parents, your peers, or maybe even bought years ago. And every purchase you've made since then is an ethical decision in consumption. How does that future look like for you? So as you know, my job is to predict disruption. And so I'm going to show you those three forces. And the first one you already see here is kind of the blurring lines between reality and virtuality, right? So you see here that the spectrum between what's real and fake is really blurring up. In 2018, you could tell when a virtual avatar was a virtual avatar. And today, you probably couldn't, because on the right, you know, they are really evolving, and Naomi Campbell may live forever in this virtual world. So the next point is about authenticity and how those challenges are coming through, because as we split between the real and the fake, people will need to find a place to escape from, both from the virtual reality and from their daily reality. And those influences are changing because they're becoming more imperfect. And no filters, the hashtag no filters, actually trending for a while now. And it's become an imperative for these consumers because they want to see what's real. And it's so nice to see a company like Ogilvy, who they themselves said that they will not work with retouched influencers in the future. Now, as we move on, those retail spaces are really helping consumers to escape their everyday. So Selfridges here has created a super self-therapy product in their actual store where they've combined VR, and it creates a hyper-realistic simulated reality that improves your mood, reduces stress, and in turn benefits physical health as well. It's a real haven for consumers to take a pause and relax themselves. And this is some of the spaces that I talk about that help people escape from both the reality and the virtuality of their lives. Another way reality and virtuality will come together is in digital goods. And the gaming phenomenon, Fortnite, has already has their characters who are kind of decked in everyday real life clothes, but they're from Balenciaga. And this emergence of a new stream of retail and commerce will come alive in virtual fashion shows, avatars becoming influencers. But if you stop there, you kind of miss the point of virtual goods, because everyone is going to have a virtual twin that they will need to have clothes to wear. And that means the identity values that are in fashion today will carry through in the digital goods as well. Our second kind of force is around why e-commerce will work. And I know this is a controversial topic, but what we're seeing in kind of the examples next are that consumers are embracing new ways of being and adopting new lifestyles as well. While this is still emergent, it is showing how the future will look like. So Hermat in India, for example, has garment rescue kits that you can kind of send in, and anything that you send in will be repaired. It might look like Nona Sauce from the LVMH, who resells their unused and dead stock fabrics from their designers at a very competitive price to be remade into clothes. And it also might look like Adidas, who has created through their app a trade-in program that allows consumers to return their unused gear or even their worn gear for a gift card or even club points. Now let's take a look at the numbers, because the business case for this is quite incredible and I think sometimes ignored. In re-commerce, we are expecting to have the fastest growth this year at 24%. Now, re-commerce is expected to kind of experience tremendous growth across APAC, particularly with the Gen Z customers. In fact, APAC has a growth that's 3 times faster than global. It's faster than Europe, but it is slower than the North America at 8%. And North America will be the biggest market for re-commerce. North America's market is expected to reach $83 billion in 2026, and it is growing 16 times faster than broader retail. But yet, I haven't got to the full picture yet, because you'll see that by 2030, in our next slide, 2 in 8 garments will actually need to be part of circular models, which means 1 in 5 garments in your wardrobe may belong to someone else. And the reality, the story behind that is because Asia won't have enough water, and re-commerce will become a necessary choice. So while I started this section of asking the question, why re-commerce will work, the reality is that re-commerce must work. And some of that responsibility of how it will work, how we bring it to money, and how we bring those business propositions to life for the consumers will really lie with some of the people and me in this room today. So on that very serious note, I am going to pivot and talk about the wealthiest generation that will be so far and how they hold the hope for retail. So initially we talk about, AR and technology and all these and the metaverse coming together. But what the Gen Z show us is really getting to the heart of the meaning of why we will do certain things in kind of what Winnie mentioned before. So Gen Z see retail as part of their outlet for self-expression. They really see it as their values and their identity. Their purchases actually say a lot about them, and they know that. And that's why they've aligned themselves and their purchases to social causes, or even something that will signal a niche group identity. Now, these young consumers haven't reached their earning potential, so price will play a critical role in their behavior. They do have a risk avoidant approach to finances, and they kind of do their best to manage their money carefully. So they're conscientiously researching, understanding, and looking for where and when they can trust certain sources online and offline. Stores, whether online or off, will have the upper hand if it's building trust with the Gen Z. So being able to see those products in person, feel their quality, directly gives the Gen Zs a sense of assurance. And plugging into experiences will build that trust as well as pleasure for them. You'll see next that kind of physical stores offer the benefits of seeing and touching products. But Gen Zs want that experience, right? They want it to align and blend seamlessly with the brand's online identities. So for example, we have here a store in Changsha called B+ Tube, and it's their social retail store. It kind of blends together social commerce, gamified AR experience, as well as a physical store experience together. And it takes those interactions from social media and brings consumers into the physical retail environment. How do they do that? When you're kind of interacting with their WeChat and with their content online, you're actually accumulating social currencies. And so the consumers, when they're in the store, they can use those currencies to unlock exclusive content and build a personalized experience for them. And this experience, they can then share on social media. It's that kind of seamless integration through content, gaming, interaction that really is the hope that keeps and excites these consumers. Now, you'll see next that kind of Gen Zers also want ease in shopping, and solutions that tap into AI that will really anticipate their needs are something that they want to lean on. Now, just because online shopping is native to Gen Z, it does not mean that they want to jump through hurdles. And in fact, when some of our data show that Gen Z has quite the similar attitudes as the rest of us, which is that they can feel overwhelmed by the number of options that are available to them, and they are frustrated with really clunky apps and websites. Now, these anticipatory capabilities that companies are building are reaching huge proportions. So some of the questions we ask our clients are, do you know your customer more than they know themselves? Because sometimes the Gen Zs do want some of that anticipatory excitement that comes from the predictive powers of machines. And equally, they want delight in discovering themselves and who they are and how they're seen by these predictive machines. We'll also see kind of stores, as I round up kind of the research for you guys, it's really about, seeing these stores become a new experience arena, merging that online and offline. My takeaways in this slide is that even though we have disparate online and offline identities, brands will have to connect to consumers twice over, once on the metaverse and once in real life, and try to figure out a way to merge those two to develop kind of not just a one-dimensional view of the consumer, but a many-dimensional view of them as well. We know that re-commerce will become a default in the future, but what does this mean for you when it comes to production lines, profitability, and also kind of how do you build that circular loop within your store? With the Gen Zs, it's about purposeful presence, having those amplified experiences, and making sure that you know what authenticity means in your world, and then conveying that succinctly to the Gen Z. And finally, as you establish that strong digital identity, keep on the pulse of the future, because as we've heard today, it's constantly changing, and you'll need to find some firm ground to stand on as you build to the future. So that comes to kind of the end of what I have to share and on my section. I'll pass on to Andrienne, who will discuss more on social commerce. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Angelica. And that was such a good start to talk a little bit more about social commerce. And as everybody knows, it's been a huge driver of sale. So social is definitely not just about likes anymore. And if you look specifically at China, like Angelica mentioned, it's such like an interesting ground for social commerce. And actually, just to put some perspective, the sales in China are 10 times more than in the US on social commerce. And 64% of Chinese consumers, as they brought something on social. So we know it's happening, we know it's interesting, but I think what's important to keep in mind as well, it's not a bottom funnel approach anymore, where we just try to use the space to drive sales. It's a lot more interesting. So I want to share with you an interesting case from IKEA, where it's playing on, in the introduction, Shailene talked a little bit about sustainability. So this definitely saved a lot of trees, and it's really truly leveraging the power of social. So this beautiful case from IKEA is in Taiwan, and across the world, IKEA in the last 2 years faded out the print version of their famous catalog that has been competing with the Bible. And to celebrate their legacy and really push the online viewership, IKEA has decided to get into Animal Crossing, this great game, and asking people, their 26 million community on Animal Crossing, to collaborate, to recreate the catalog online using the characters. And it was really great. And they brought that back on Facebook, where people could vote for their best design and discuss around it. So a really, really interesting case that really, brings people together and really use the social design principles and playing on, advocacy and conversation. So if we look a little bit more at the results of what this has been, that managed to deliver, 2.8 million reach on Facebook only, and there was like zero media investment. But I think what's more interesting is how they collaborated. with the community on Animal Crossing to create, and how they push like interaction on social with voting and sharing and discussing. And I mean, this drove a huge amount of coverage in the media. So that's interesting. We all know the power of social in going, beyond borders. But I think, it's like looking at how it goes beyond borders as well, but also how we tap into some specific community and make it conversational. But I think the most powerful, data point here, it drove 1.4 million click-through rate in the first 24 hours that this was live. So it just to show that it's really important to look at social commerce more of an hourglass model, where there's like all the awareness and the engagement and yes, the sell, but also how at the bottom we use, we get into advocacy and loyalty, which is very important. A lot of marketers are looking at easing the customer journey, and I think social commerce can be a great space for that. And now, I mean, Neil, we're getting into another space, the metaverse, which you'll talk a little bit more about.
Yes, hi guys. Well, experience, not as we know it. Well, we're starting to know it. Some of the most searched for terms on Google were NFT and metaverse. So 110 billion US was the value generated in sales of virtual goods in 2021. To put that into context, that's a little over half of New Zealand's economy. Epic Games, the developer of Fortnite, made 50 million from one set of branded avatar skins alone. So prepare yourself for this new economy. The metaverse, it's this new third space between your home and retail that complements your traffic channels. It's virtual, online, but has the characteristics of offline. You can own things, not just as a JPEG that sits on your computer, but as a crafted virtual asset that is registered against your name on a global unified database that we call the blockchain. As Angelia mentioned earlier, you can engage with hyper-realistic virtual celebrities and brand ambassadors with personality, no different from a living movie character that can provide a personalized level of consumer engagement beyond what a traditional website could do alone. Your profile photo is now a 3D representation of yourself. Maybe at the start, you don't care what your 3D object is, but after using it over and over again digitally, that 3D object is you in the virtual world. Your virtual style now becomes comparatively as important as your real world style. Using your virtual form, you will explore virtual worlds parallel to the real world that has their own currency, behavior, and its own foot traffic, gaming level foot traffic beyond real world comparison. So brands are now opening their virtual stores in these virtual worlds like Roblox, Decentraland, and Sandbox. Last week, Gucci launched Gucci Town on Roblox, where users can style their avatars in classic Gucci outfits and explore new Gucci cosmetic products. Hyundai has launched Hyundai's Future Mobility City, also on Roblox, as a platform for users anywhere to explore Hyundai's products and future mobility concepts, always on and always accessible. Pernod Ricard bought virtual property on Decentraland as a space for ongoing events. Last month, this space became the venue of virtual Coachella. Participants from all over the world could visit, enjoy the music, buy real-world drinks from the virtual bar, and have the opportunity to win tickets to the real-world Coachella event. Louis Vuitton, 10 months continuing on their Louis Vuitton Louis the Game video game, releasing NFTs and new activities to create new ways for consumers to build a relationship with their Louis Vuitton brand whilst appealing to a younger generation. Burberry enlisted virtual celebrity Ayayi to promote a limited edition real world scarf that sold with an NFT during last year's Alibaba's Singles Day event. They sold 1,000 of these joint real world and virtual products for $435 US each. Burberry also partnered with a gaming company, Mythical Games, to sell a Burberry-styled NFT of its signature Sharky B character. All 750 NFTs sold out within 30 seconds. These NFTs, crafted by your favorite brand's visual artists, are becoming, once they become available on the market as a gift or a purchase, they live on a second life as an autonomous point of interest on social channels and NFT exchange programs or platforms. Visual styling is now appearing in appearing in traditional content uses. Here, Balenciaga have taken the fashion catwalk to a whole new level. They're using virtual characters with real world styling in a virtual world to best showcase their fall 2021 collection. These styles are so surreal and so cool, you're influenced to buy the real world product. All kinds of brands are trying out different uses of the metaverse to work out what fits them best. But then you have Nike, who are doing all of it. Their Nike Land on Roblox has had about 7 million visitors since last November. That's about 1 million store visits a month. Their virtual sneaker company, Artifact, made 3.1 million in 7 minutes on a line of real world sneakers that were sold paired with NFTs. Nike has also effectively leveraged their metaverse IP into traditional content channels such as Alibaba's Tmall and Snapchat in the West. Metaverse has become their visual language for storytelling across all digital touchpoints. So beyond the goods transaction, people buy the story, they buy the art, they buy the creative craftsmanship. The metaverse has become an opportunity for brands to express their story, reimagined in ways never possible. The culture of the metaverse has existed for quite some time now, but now we formalized its consumer culture with a name. We can leverage technology to amplify your brand experience, and all we need to do is as a brand, is provide access. Ben, over to you.
Thank you, Neil. So now let's move on to the data. So a lot of us probably already heard about the saying that data is the new oil. And if personalization is the new growth engine, then the data is probably the fuel for it. So nowadays, we all know that consumers are more demanding and a lot of the requirements are shifting very fast. However, all over the internet, we're all still seeing the content with actually no big difference. So it's important for brands to actually catch up consumers' attention. So data and personalization can play a very important role here. So with this deep knowledge about consumer itself and the underlying data, so we are now not only able to provide the right content, we are more able to provide the personalized content and the personalized offer at the right time and the right place. If the brands get it done right, so they are able to actually drive more consumer attention, and all those attentions will also drive more willingness to pay the premium for that. How to actually achieve that? So here is, for example, a simplified illustration of an architecture that we've been working on since 2020 for a brand in China. So it's basically very three simple buckets that needs to be aware of. The first one is really connect the data from various channels, as well as offline, as well as the online channels to collect the consumer related data. And in the middle, you will see that we connect the data with all those engagement systems, like the different modules that make use of those data. And the last piece is really about the BI engine at the end. So all those data will be then sent to a centralized BI tool engine that helps the brand, the marketer, and the agency to deep dive all those data. So overall, you'll see this is the power, the data powered consumer operation at its core. So as a result, we have, since its launch, we're actually able to get 53% of new member recruitment through all those operations that powered by the data. And when we do all those automation within those data and automation with all those members, we've been able to drive 80% more increase in member lifecycle value. And at the end, as of for today now, we are already connected to 9 different consumer touch points. All the data is being collected and integrated into one single database that helps the brand to see the single customer view. Now let me hand over to Till about direct to consumer.
Thanks, Ben. Hi. So if we take a look at direct to consumer in terms of direct to consumer as a business driver, we look at some data points in terms of 91% of consumers are more likely to shop with brands who recognize, remember, and provide relevant targeted communications. Now, while there's a balance between privacy and personalization, customers today expect that when they visit your online store, they get a much more personalized experience based upon communications they have engaged with from you, the point that you've targeted them, or based upon what they have browsed previously, or even based upon the engagements that they have had in store. They want you to help them make decisions online, just like in store. And then shoppers are willing to pay a premium for trust and assurance from a brand's direct-to-consumer website compared to marketplaces in some regions. A premium of approximately 20%. Of course, that depends upon the industry, apparel, health and beauty, electronics, etc. So let's take a quick look at immersive D2C at work in one of the examples that we have. So the online consumer is virtually immersed in a high-touch in-store experience. That's heightening the brand value of this store, and of course heightening the customer experience. It's fueled by data and technology, and it personalizes the experience across online and in store. But it's not just about the data and technology, it's about brand leadership in terms of connecting the digital commerce team to the functions across the business. D2C touches many parts of the business. So let's take a look at the 3 pillars of D2C bringing advantage to business driving. So firstly, it creates a unique online shopping experience for brand differentiation. Now that's personalizing a customer experience with services and communications tailored to a consumer's needs. It's customizing their shopping experience to your brand and category, staying true to your brand value. It's integrating digital commerce with social media for effective influencer and brand advocates campaigns, and making any touch points, including in store or pop-up stores, commercial and shoppable where your customers are connecting. Then D2C in terms of driving necessary brand leadership. Shoppers look to D2C websites to deliver immersive and engaging and entertaining shopping experiences. 25% of consumers look to virtually try on and demo products before purchasing, certainly in high end and various industries. And 29% seek entertaining shopping experiences. So we look at integrating your digital commerce team and with people across the functional business, and make data and technology the priority for the organization, and implement flexible commerce system where back-end digital commerce engines will work with endless user touch points, or what's otherwise known as heads. So think AR, live streaming, social, video assisted sales, and any engagement environment digitally that you can imagine, all digital to heighten engagement, conversion and average order values. So then D2C powers ownership of your customer data. Now what that means is really shoppers reward brands that are able to apply data-driven personalization effectively. That contributes perhaps to doubling of basket size, and also then the potential for your consumers, your customers, more likely to promote your brand to those of their peers. Now, with that data and technology, you can gain intimate knowledge of your customers and valuable insights to drive your innovation strategy, and design customer experiences with data-driven edge. So customer experience first, but fueled by data and technology. And of course, customers, like I've said, are more willing to share data when they're better at experiencing the shopping experiences that are personalized. Now, giving data away to marketplaces in some regions is potentially empowering competitors with insights about your customers, and doesn't necessarily give you that brand leadership and empowering of your customer data. So D2C as a real business driver, and all the above contribute to brands forecasting to drive a significant share of their sales from direct to consumer, online and in store in some cases. Some brands, as much as 50% of sales are forecast to be driven by direct to consumer online in the next few years. That might not be for everyone, but direct to consumer is a business driver, and it's not going to slow down. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. I mean, as always, I think there was so much to talk about there, and I know we've had a few questions, which I think we'll get back to folks individually on. given that we're almost at time. But I just wanted to wrap up. And by the way, feel free if you want to drop some questions in. We'll come back to you after this as well. I just wanted to kind of bookend where I started out with, and again, thank you for everybody, talking there, Tim, to example, to customer ownership, which is great. It's one of the sort of primary imperatives that we see as well. I want to talk about a way forward, really, but first a couple more quotes, just to kind of get us thinking a little bit. I think one thing is certainly clear for me, and certainly for the marketing folks on this call, that marketing, its role has become far greater than it ever has before in terms of its role in building collaborations, building ecosystems, the ownership of the retail experience, as we've seen, from everything that Neil presented all the way through. So it is a real core driver of business growth moving forwards, and many board members think that. So the role has to change. The way marketing makes impact has to continue to evolve and change. One other interesting quote I just wanted to leave you with before we wrap is that a bit of a shift, I would say, from the analysts on the street. With all of that turmoil we talked about at the beginning, with the change in the marketplace, with everything that you've seen today, it has to be coordinated, right? It has to have, we have to have a North Star. Businesses have to have a North Star and have a coherent and long-term strategy. And that is, I think, a big shift, not only from managing the quarter-to-quarter numbers that most of us have to manage, but also making sure that we are future-proofing the businesses for what is to come as well, and having a plan, having a strategy around that. So I think these are kind of key elements that need to go into the thinking as we kind of think forwards. And then just again, to go back to these imperatives, hopefully, you were inspired by everything that was shown to you today, and you can start to connect how those examples, how those themes, how those topics ladder up to meeting these imperatives. But just to kind of finalize, I think it's really important that this is done under an umbrella of a clear vision, right? A clear vision and a clear purpose. You have to know where you are today in order to kind of work out where that best speed to value is had, right? It's not a case of doing everything that has necessarily been talked about today, but again, coordinating it and understanding where the value is going to come from first to help you meet these growth imperatives. And I think that means also when businesses are innovating and transforming, they have to do that for impact around that speed to value, around the value that they expect to be able to create from these growth imperatives. So again, I just want to thank everybody so much. We will certainly circle back to questions. And we will, follow up if any of you want to further have discussions around any of this. Feel free to reach out to us. Thank you for everybody's participation today. It's great to have so many people on the line as well, and thank you to the panel. Thank you, Winnie and Christian, for your time in giving us your point of view. And that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody.